Sentient Pulse asks on the Excel subreddit, formula if value between a/b or c/d or e/if, then statement is x. Help, please. Hi, I am trying to do an Excel formula reading from a single cell, and depending on what is read from that cell, it shows one of multiple possible words in a different cell. In the target cell will be a number between 0 and 28, and then there's a formula that gives a bunch of different options depending on what the number is. And so this person has tried a bunch of possibilities using if statements combined with and. That's not the ideal way. While you could solve this with a nested if function, that's definitely not recommended. A better solution would be an ifs or a switch function, or even better is to create a lookup table and then use an XLOOKUP to fetch the right value. And that's exactly what we are going to do. So first we need to construct our lookup table. What we will be doing is each time writing down the lower bounds. So we start with 1, 12, 16, 20, 23. And then we have low, medium, med/high, high, and severe. And so we will have an input cell. So we'll call this the input cell, E1. And then we have the result, or I'll call it output. So let's input a random number like say 15, right? Okay, so now in the output cell, we write the formula, the lookup formula. And so for this, we use an XLOOKUP. Now, what the XLOOKUP does is we provided a value, in this case, the input value, and then we look for this value in a range. In this case, the range here containing the different numbers. And then from this, the XLOOKUP function will return one of these results. So that is what you call the return array. And so how this will work is the XLOOKUP function looks at the input value, then searches this in the lookup array, column A, and then returns the corresponding value from column B. Now, if I press enter, this will give me an error. And the reason why that's happening is because 15 is not immediately found here in my lookup array. So if I would change this to 12, that actually works. That gives me a medium. But because 15 is not immediately in there, I get an error. So how do we solve this? Well, it's by adding an optional argument, and it's the argument match mode is the fifth argument. And here we want to specify what kind of match we're looking for. In this case, we would be looking for an exact match or next smaller item, because each time we have provided the lower bounds. If you provided the upper bounds, such as 11, 15, 19, etc., then you would want to use exact match or next larger item. But in our case, we go for -1, which represents an exact match or next smaller item. So I press enter, and as you can see, if we now input 15, we actually get medium. If I press 17, you get medium/high, etc. If I input 25, I get severe. Now there's one last issue we have to tackle. If we input 0, we get an error. And that's because that's below our lower bounds or lowest bound, right? So how we deal with this is we have an optional argument, is the fourth argument. It's called if not found. And so here we can say what needs to be inputted if we can't find the solution, meaning everything below 0, or perhaps also if we input text, that could also be an issue. But in this case, we'll simply input nil in between double quotation marks. Press enter, and you can see 0 will now return nil. I think this is sufficient, but do keep in mind if people input -5, this will also be nil. And if they input high, this will actually be the highest case. So these are some edge cases you might want to deal with, but I don't think it's necessary in this case. So as long as you stay within reasonable bounds, such as 22, you get a correct result using this XLOOKUP function. So it's always a good idea when you're trying to nest a lot of if statements. Once you get over 3, definitely consider using ifs or switch function, or perhaps even better, a lookup table like we have just constructed.